A group of undocumented students, also known as the Dreamers, recently tried to cross the U.S.-Mexico border as part of a demonstration. The Dreamers asked for political asylum, and their cases are currently being reviewed. Valley View's Rubi Martinez sat down with Eileen Truax to talk about the Dream movement. Truax is a journalist and author of the book Dreamers.
Thank you, Eileen, for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the Dreamers. Who are the Dreamers and why have they received attention nationally but also internationally?
Well, the Dreamers are the members of this generation, these young people who were brought to the U.S. by their parents, undocumented, when they were very young, some of them 1, 2, 3 years old, some of them months. And they grew up in the U.S. like any other American kid. They went to the school, they learned to speak English. They just lived their lives just like an average American kid, but when they finish high school, when they become adults at 18 years old, they realize that they are not allowed to keep going with their lives, going to college, look for a job.
And what's their mission? What are they asking for?
Well, the name of the Dreamers is because there's a legislative piece in Congress presented in 2001. The DREAM Act, and if this law passes, it will allow this generation to have a regular immigration status in the country. They will have a green card, they will have a path to citizenship under certain requirements.
And I mean, can you talk about how the Dreamers, how have they transformed the immigration debate in this country?
Yes, of course. I think when we talk about immigration, we always think in the big picture. We think about numbers, 11.5 million people. We think about politics, partisanship, but we don't think about stories. We don't think about real people. What happens when an immigrant family comes to the country with small children? How do they learn to speak English? How are they going to school? What happens if they get sick? So what Dreamers are doing is just sharing their stories, putting a face on the immigration debate to let us know that this is not only a political issue, this is a human rights issue and a social justice issue.
And can you tell us about the Dream 9 and Dream 30 movement?
Well, this is an interesting movement. What has happened to some Dreamers is that when they reach 18 years old or more, they finish high school, they realize they don't have any open doors in the future. Dream 9 and Dream 30, what did was to approach to the border and present themselves to immigration authorities and look for a legal return to the U.S., either through a humanitarian visa or through a political asylum.
Now, I know you're very knowledgeable in the subject and you've done extensive research, and of course you wrote the book Dreamers, and you're also a supporter of the movement. What would you say to those against it and the ones that say, well, Dreamers are just pushing their luck and they really aren't entitled to anything?
What I feel, I mean, anyone is entitled to have their own opinion, but what I feel is that many of those opinions are made without having the whole information. In my experience, when I meet people and I start telling the stories, or I'm in a situation where a dreamer starts telling their own story, they're still fighting to stay here because they want to study, to work here, to give back to this country. For me, there's nothing more American than that.
Well, thank you, Elaine, for being here with us today, and back to the studio.
Thank you.